Incidents can be created from incoming email. They can be created from self-service. They could be created directly, right here within the incident console by clicking New if I'm a service desk analyst. Okay? They could also be created through workflow. So, for example, I may have a workflow for a service request or something that automatically kicks off the creation of different incidents. Okay? Now, just to show you some of the things that we changed, most of this would look the same for most users. If you're not already aware, we did, 1 or 2 releases back, add the ability now for customers to expose both the queue and a staff member. Initially, when Remedyforce was released, we just had owner ID, and it could belong to the owner. But a lot of people said, hey, we also want it to belong to the queue so that other members of the queue can see the ticket if that particular owner is unavailable. So now you have the ability to expose both staff and queue. All right. Most of you are aware of that. You have the hover over capabilities. One modification or enhancement that we provided is now your administrators can configure and control which fields show up when you hover over that client contact card. So by default, the 4 that you see exposed here are the ones that are visible, but your administrators can go in now and they can add others. Maybe they want to add address, supervisor, anything else from that user's profile that they might want to add and have exposed. Now, those of you who have been working with, some of you may still be using an older version where you haven't upgraded to the unified console. So some of this is going to look new to you. Those of you who have been using the unified console, the Remedyforce console, are aware that we now have actions and agent tool drop-downs from which the analysts can take action. So I want to point out that it's very easy for administrators to choose to expose or hide different actions. You now have a separator bar. I'm using Firefox right now, so it's not particularly dark, but it's very easy for the administrators to modify the order in which actions appear and maybe group them in a way that they think is logical. So that's what I did. I moved some of these around so that they're grouped logically, and then there is that separator bar there. We added a new action capability. You can now add Submit for Approval as an action on your different forms. So for example, change request. If there's an approval step, you can just immediately submit it for approval right here from the Actions button. You used to have to go to a different place on a form to click a button, but we tried to make it easy for you. Under Agent Tools, that's where you get in to search the knowledge base, explore CIs, etc. All right. So other than the ability to reorder those and have that separator bar group things logically, that has not changed. All right. Another thing that has changed, that's an enhancement. It's a usability enhancement. We used to talk about, the incident was a tab, which was just this primary form, and then related lists was the name of the button, which a lot of people didn't understand. I mean, what's a related list? It's all part of the same record, right? It made it sound as though there were 2 separate records, and there aren't. There's one. So the incident form shows the most commonly used fields, but when you want to get down to other areas of the form that you may or may not need to see, you just click on the Record Details button. And then that's what takes you to things like the ability to show the chatter feed if somebody's following a ticket by chatter, or to see your action history. So for example, this particular ticket, we added a note. The end user actually added a note to her own ticket, right? And I believe I submitted it or sent an email. All right. And this is where you could link configuration items. You could attach files, add new notes. Most of you are familiar with that. And then you have your little audit trail. Most of those items used to just be on related lists, but again, we call it record details now. Okay. Now, when you create a ticket, I want to point something out here. Let's just go and create a new incident. I want to point out to you that to make, as a usability enhancement, you have the ability to maybe add a user, and if that user is associated with an account, that account field will automatically be populated. All right. Or if I want to do it from reverse, I can select the account and then select the user only from users that are associated with the account. So if I select account here, I have one account called Universal Systems. And so it's going to only show me names of users who belong to that account, Universal Systems LLC. Great way to look it up. I'm going to go ahead and select a specific user, and I wanted to point out something. A moment ago, you may have noticed that I hovered over the contact card to see details. Well, a new enhancement with Summer 14 as well is that now you have that quick visual to indicate if somebody's flagged a VIP client. So Mark, one of my users in the Universal Systems account, is flagged as a VIP. So as soon as I selected him, I see this flag that he's a VIP, and it makes me aware that I need to, maybe handle things a certain way. All right? Okay. Now, another thing that I want to point out is that we're just going to go ahead and open a specific ticket. Most of you are aware that when you attempt to close an incident or any record, you're presented with a close form. And up until this release, you really didn't have any control over which fields were on the close form and which kind of data you're being asked for. So we've added an enhancement, and now your administrators can customize the close form. So we've added a field set for each object, and the incident, object, change, task, etc. We've added a new field set, and then all the administrators have to do is go to that field set, and then they can add or remove fields to the close form. So that's very helpful as well. A lot of the things that I'm mentioning or I'm showing to you today, we're certainly not going through like a training exercise where I walk you through how to set these things up. We'd be here for a while. Okay. All right. I've already talked about the ability to reorder actions and what have you and put in separator bars. But I want to point out to you that some of these things really are so easy to set up now. I'm going to go to Administration. I'm going to go to Application Settings and go to Consoles. Okay. Now, from Consoles, I've enabled and used the Remedyforce console. For those of you who have not yet switched to the unified console that I've been working from, this is where you would go to configure that and say, yes, this is what I want. For each of the console views that I've been working with, and I've really only been working with incidents and service requests so far, you can have different layouts for different classes of users, if you will, or different profiles. So by default, we've got the default setting for profiles, and it's the incident console default layout, which is what I've been showing every time I go to the console. But when you look down here, you can see that you can have different layouts, if you wanted to, for different profiles. So I could choose Change Manager, for example, and I could choose to create and edit a layout to associate with them. Now, this capability existed for incidents before summer release. We've added that ability now to have the ability to create and customize layouts, if you will, for everything else now, for the changes and problems and releases, etc. And when I mentioned earlier that I could go ahead and add separator bars, etc., to different profiles, if I go back to default, I did it there. I could add the separator bar if I want to, okay, and if I save the profile. So those are some usability enhancements, but the ability now to add layouts, have different layouts for all of the different modules, if you will, is really a great thing, I think. Okay. Now, you can add custom actions or agent tools as well. You're not limited to just the ones. I closed that a little too fast. You're not limited to just what we show here down in the list for available actions. You do have the ability now to add those. And there's a process, it's documented, that involves creating URLs for those. All right. Okay. At this point, we have looked quite a bit at what we've done differently with the consoles and some of the incident capabilities in any of the forms. All right. I want to point out that we've made some enhancements to service level management capabilities. And now we've added a way to determine how long a record's been in a given status. So we created a work status indicator. And even though these columns were not in the out-of-the-box view, for demo purposes, so that I could illustrate this new capability, I added to my layouts the work clock status, time spent in a current status, total work time, and total duration columns, just to show them. And then when you configure this, you determine, when the clock should be ticking. So the clock would be ticking or running in specific statuses. So for example, you can see the third ticket down, that clock is still running, and it's been running a while, because the status is assigned. So I have a rule saying keep the clock running whenever a ticket's assigned or in progress. Pause it when it's in a different state. Okay? And that would change. The clock could start ticking. If I go in, for example, and now I choose to change the status from opened to in progress and save. That was ticket 305. You'll now see that the clock's running and we're at 0 minutes. Great way, if you have the need, again, to track total time or total duration, great way to do it. And then we added reports. So there are reports available now that you can run to report against the time. Okay? You can report against the elapsed time very easily. All right. The next thing I want to mention is I'm going to hop over here to the End User Self-Service Portal. Now, most of you who have, again, been Remedyforce customers are aware of the fact that you are able to brand the self-service portal. You are able to have a couple of different themes, maybe tied to different profiles. So we've increased that limit. You can have many different themes, and you can have different layouts, okay, for different categories of users, if you will. All right. Now, one of the things I want to point out that are enhancements to self-service are the ability that we now have to, as you see traditionally, you would see on pages any of the templates that you've exposed to a user, even if they navigated by category. All right? So perhaps they'd get in here and they'd only be able to see what they want, and they'd have to go directly into the form. And the only way they could do that would be from self-service. Now there's a URL capability, so for any of your templates, there's a URL to launch that template. So you can now embed that URL elsewhere, maybe in your intranet site, etc., to call up a particular form if you don't need users or don't want them to have to log into the self-service portal. And I'll show you where that's done in a minute. One of the first things I really want to show you with self-service is that chat feature. A lot of people like this. All right. So when a user is in the self-service portal, all they have to do is click on Chat to initiate a chat session. From the agent's perspective, they have to be chat status available to be able to call, be selected. Now, it is one-to-one, meaning that, as an agent, at least in this current release, as an analyst, I can only be engaged in one chat session at a time. And if I want to change my availability, I could change it to offline or busy if I didn't want somebody who's initiating a chat session to have it opened with me